The Tales of the Laxdale Saga is brought to you by NotaProfit.org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. The Laxdale Saga, Part 4, Chapter Roman 25. About Hoskuld's sons now, Hoskuld's sons shall be told about. Thorleik, Hoskuld's son, had been a great seafarer, and taken service with men in lordly station, when he was on his merchant voyages before he settled down as a householder, and a man of mark he was thought to be. He had also been on Viking raids, and given good account of himself by reason of his courage. Bard, Hoskuld's son, had also been a seafarer, and was well accounted of wherever he went, for he was the best of brave men and true, and a man of moderation in all things. Bard married a broad, Firth woman named Astrid, who came of a good stock. Bard's son was named Thorarin, and his daughter Gudny, who married Hall, the son of Fight Styr, and from them are descended many great families. Hrut, Hrjolf's son, gave a thrall of his named Hrolf his freedom, and with it a certain amount of money, and a dwelling place where his land joined with Hoskuld's. And it lay so near the landmark that Hrut's people had made a mistake in the matter, and settled the freedman down on the land belonging to Hoskuld. He soon gained there much wealth. Hoskuld took it very much to heart that Hrut should have placed his freedman right up against his ear, and bade the freedman pay him money for the lands he lived on, for it is mine own. The freedman went to Hrut, and told him all they had spoken together. Hrut bade him give no heed, and pay no money to Hoskuld. For I do not know, he said, to which of us the land belonged. So the freedman went home, and goes on with his household just as before. A little later, Thorleik, Hoskuld's son, went at the advice of his father to the dwelling of the freedman, and took him and killed him. And Thorleik claimed as his and his father's own all the money the freedman had made. Hrut heard this, and he and his sons liked it very ill. They were most of them grown up, and the band of kinsmen was deemed a most forbidding one to grapple with. Fell back on the law as to how this ought to turn out, and when the matter was searched into by lawyers, Hrut and his sons stood at but little advantage, for it was held a matter of great weight that Hrut had set the freedman down without leave on Hoskuld's land, where he had made money, Thorleik having slain the man within his and his father's own lands. Hrut took his lot very much to heart, but things remained quiet. After that, Thorleik had a homestead built on the boundary of Hrut and Hoskuld's lands, and it was called Cumness. There Thorleik lived for a while, as has been told before. Thorleik trademark begat a son of his wife. The boy was sprinkled with water, and called Bolli. He was at an early age a very promising man. Chapter Roman 26. The death of Hoskuld, A.D. 965. Hoskuld, Collodale's son, fell ill in his old age, and he sent for his sons and other kinsfolk. And when they were come, Hoskuld spoke to the brothers Bard and Thorleik, and said, I have taken some sickness, and as I have not been much in the way of falling ill before, I think this may bring me to death. And now, as you know, you are both begotten in wedlock, and are entitled to all inheritance left by me, but there is a third son of mine, one who is not born in wedlock, and I will ask you brothers to allow him, Olaf to wit, to be adopted, so that he take of my means one. 30. With you, Bard answered first, and said that he would do as his father wished. For I look for honor from Olaf in every way, the more so the wealthier he becomes. Then Thorleik said, It is far from my wish that Olaf be adopted. He has plenty of money already, and you, father, have for a long time given him a great deal, and for a very long time dealt unevenly with us. I will not freely give up the honor to which I am born. Hoskuld said, Surely you will not rob me of the law that allows me to give 12 ounces to my son, seeing how highborn Olaf is on his mother's side. To this Thorleik now agreed. Then Hoskuld took the gold ring, Hakon's gift, that weighed a mark, and the sword, King's gift, whereon was half a mark of gold, and gave them to Olaf, his son, and therewith his good luck and that of the family, saying he did not speak in this way, because he did not know well enough that the luck had already come to him. Olaf took his gifts, and said he would risk how Thorleik would like it. Thorleik liked it very ill, and thought that Hoskuld had behaved in a very underhand way to him. Olaf said, "I shall not give up the gifts, Thorleik, for you agreed to the gift in the face of witnesses, and I shall run the risk to keep it." Bard said he would obey his father's wishes. After that Hoskuld died, and his death was very much grieved for, in the first place by his sons, and next by all his relations and friends. His sons had a worthy cairn made for him, but little money was put into it with him. And when this was over, the brothers began to talk over the matter of preparing an arvail, burial feast after their father, for at that time such was the custom. Olaf said, "It seems to me that we should not be in a hurry about preparing this feast, if it is to be as noble as we should think right. Now the autumn is very far worn, and the ingathering of means for it is no longer easy. Most people who have to come a long way would find that a hard matter in the autumn days, so that it is certain that many would not come of the men we most should like to see, so I will now make the offer, next summer at the Thing, to bid men to the feast, and I will bear 1/3 of the cost of the wassail." The brothers agreed to that, and Olaf now went home. Thorleik and Bard now share the goods between them. Bard had the estate and lands, which was what most men held to, as he was the most popular, but Thorleik got for his share more of the chattels. Olaf and Bard got on well together, but Olaf and Thorleik rather snappishly. Now the next winter passed, and summer comes, and time wears on towards the Thing. The sons of Hoskuld got ready to go to the Thing. It was soon seen clearly enough how Olaf took the lead of the brothers. When they got to the Thing they set up 3 booths, and make themselves comfortable in a handsome manner. Chapter XXVII. The funeral feast for Hoskuld. It is told how one day when people went to the Law Rock, Olaf stood up and asked for a hearing, and told them first of the death of his father. And there are now here many men, kinsmen and friends of his. It is the will of my brothers that I ask you to a funeral feast in memory of Hoskuld our father. All you chieftains, for most of the mightier men are such as were bound by alliances to him, I let it be known that no one of the greater men shall go away gift-less. And herewith I bid all the farmers, and any who will accept rich or poor, to a half-month's feast at Hoskuldstead, 10 weeks before the winter. And when Olaf finished his speech, good cheer was made thereto, and his bidding was looked upon as a right lordly one. And when Olaf came home to the booth, he told his brothers what he had settled to do. The brothers were not much pleased, and thought that this was going in for far too much state. After the Thing the brothers rode home, and the summer now wears on. Then the brothers got ready for the feast, and Olaf put forward unstintedly his 3rd part, and the feast was furnished with the best of provisions. Great stores were laid in for this feast, for it was expected many folk would come, and when the time came, it is said that most of the chief men came that were asked. There were so many that most men say that there could not be far short of 901,080. This is the most crowded burial feast that has been in Iceland, second to that which the sons of Hjalti gave at the funeral of their father, at which time there were 1,440 guests. But this feast was of the bravest in every way, and the brothers got great honor therefrom, Olaf being at the head of the affair throughout. Olaf took even share with his brothers in the gifts, and gifts were bestowed on all the chiefs. When most of the men had gone away, Olaf went to have a talk with Thorleik his brother, and said, "So it is, kinsmen, as you know, that no love has been lost between us. Now I would beg for a better understanding in our brotherhood. I know you did not like when I took the heirlooms my father gave me on his dying day. Now if you think yourself wronged in this, I will do as much for gaining back your whole goodwill as to give fostering to your son. For it is said that ever he is the lesser man who fosters another's child." Thorleik took this in good part, and said, as was true, that this was honorably offered. And now Olaf took home Bolli, the son of Thorleik, who at this time was 3 winters old. They parted now with the utmost affection, and Bolli went home to Hrut with Olaf. Thorgerd received him well, and Bolli grew up there, and was loved no less than their own children. Chapter XXVIII. The birth of Kay, Jartan, Olaf's son, A.D. 970 Olaf and Thorgerd had a son, and the boy was sprinkled with water, and a name was given him, Olaf letting him be called Kay. Jarten after Mick Jarten, his mother's father. Bolli and Kay Jarten were much of an age. Olaf and Thorgerd had still more children. 3 sons were called Steinthur and Halldor and Helgi, and Hoskuld was the name of the youngest of Olaf's sons. The daughters of Olaf and his wife were named Bergthora, Thorgerd, and Thorbjorg. All their children were of goodly promise as they grew up. At that time Holmgang Bersi lived in Soaby at an abode called Tung. He comes to see Olaf, and asked for Halldor his son to foster. Olaf agreed to this, and Halldor went home with him, being then 1 winter old. That summer Bersi fell ill, and lay in bed for a great part of the summer. It is told how one day, when all the men were out haymaking at Tung, and only they 2, Bersi and Halldor, were left in the house, Halldor lay in his cradle, and the cradle fell over under the boy, and he fell out of it on to the floor, and Bersi could not get to him. Then Bersi said this ditty: "Here we both lie in helpless plight, Halldor and I, have no power left us. Old age afflicts me, youth afflicts you. You will get better, but I shall get worse." Later on people came in and picked Halldor up off the floor, and Bersi got better. Halldor was brought up there, and was a tall man and doughty looking. Kay Jarten, Olaf's son, grew up at home at Hrut. He was of all men the goodliest of those who have been born in Iceland. He was striking of countenance and fair of feature. He had the finest eyes of any man, and was light of hue. He had a great deal of hair as fair as silk, falling in curls. He was a big man and strong, taking after his mother's father Egil, or his uncle Thorolf. Kay Jarten was better proportioned than any man, so that all wondered who saw him. He was better skilled at arms than most men. He was a deft craftsman, and the best swimmer of all men. In all deeds of strength he was far before others, more gentle than any other man, and so engaging that every child loved him. He was light of heart, and free with his money. Olaf loved Kay Jarten best of all his children. Bolli, his foster brother, was a great man. He came next to Kay Jarten in all deeds of strength and prowess. He was strong, and fair of face and courteous, and most warrior-like, and a great dandy. The foster brothers were very fond of each other. Olaf now remained quietly in his home, and for a good many years. Chapter Roman 29. Olaf's second journey to Norway, A.D. 975. It is told how one spring Olaf broke the news to Thorgerd, that he wished to go out voyaging, and I wish you to look after our household and children. Thorgerd said she did not much care about doing that, but Olaf said he would have his way. He bought a ship that stood up in the west, at Vadel. Olaf started during the summer, and brought his ship to Hordaland. There, a short way inland, lived a man whose name was Geirmund Roar, a mighty man and wealthy, and a great Viking. He was an evil man to deal with, but had now settled down in quiet at home, and was of the bodyguard of Earl Hakon. The mighty Geirmund went down to his ship, and soon recognized Olaf, for he had heard him spoken of before. Geirmund bade Olaf come and stay with him, with as many of his men as he liked to bring. Olaf accepted his invitation, and went there with 7 men. The crew of Olaf went into lodgings about Hordaland. Geirmund entertained Olaf well. His house was a lofty one, and there were many men there, and plenty of amusement all the winter. And towards the end of the winter Olaf told Geirmund the reason of his voyage, which was that he wished to get for himself somehow timber, and said he set great store by obtaining timber of a choice kind. Geirmund said, "Earl Hakon has the best of woods, and I know quite well if you went to see him you would be made welcome to them, for the Earl receives well men who are not half so well bred as you, Olaf, when they go to see him." In the spring Olaf got ready to go and find Hakon Earl, and the Earl gave him exceeding good welcome, and bade Olaf stay with him as long as he liked. Olaf told the Earl the reason of his journey, "And I beg this of you, sir, that you give us permission to cut wood for house, building from your forests." The Earl answered, "You are welcome to load your ship with timber, and I will give it you. for I think it no everyday occurrence when such men as you come from Iceland to visit me." At parting the earl gave him a goal, inlaid axe, and the best of keepsakes it was, and therewith they parted in the greatest friendship. Geirmund in the meantime set stewards over his estates secretly, and made up his mind to go to Iceland in the summer in Olaf's ship. He kept this secret from every one. Olaf knew nothing about it till Geirmund brought his money to Olaf's ship, and very great wealth it was. Olaf said, "You should not have gone in my ship if I had known of this beforehand, for I think there are those in Iceland for whom it would be better never to have seen you. But since you have come with so much goods, I cannot drive you out like a straying cur." Geirmund said, "I shall not return for all your high words, for I mean to be your passenger." Olaf and his got on board and put out to sea. They had a good voyage and made Broadfirth, and they put out their gangways and landed at Salmon river mouth. Olaf had the wood taken out of his ship, and the ship put up in the shed his father had made. Olaf then asked Geirmund to come and stay with him. That summer Olaf had a fire, hall built at Hrut, a greater and better than had ever been seen before. Noble legends were painted on its wainscoting and in the roof, and this was so well done that the hall was thought even more beautiful when the hangings were not up. Geirmund did not meddle with everyday matters, but was uncouth to most people. He was usually dressed in this way. He wore a scarlet kirtle below, and a grey cloak outside, and a bearskin cap on his head, and a sword in his hand. This was a great weapon and good, with a hilt of walrus tooth, with no silver on it. The brand was sharp, and no rust would stay thereon. This sword he called footbitter, and he never let it out of his hands. Geirmund had not been there long before he fell in love with Thurid, Olaf's daughter, and proposed to Olaf for her hand, but he gave him a straight refusal. Then Geirmund gave some money to Thorgerd with a view to gaining the match. She took the money, for it was offered unstintedly. Then Thorgerd broached the matter to Olaf, and said she thought their daughter could not be better married, for he is a very brave man, wealthy and high, mettled. Then Olaf answered, "I will not go against you in this any more than in other things, though I would sooner marry Thurid to someone else." Thorgerd went away and thought her business had sped well, and now told Geirmund the upshot of it. He thanked her for her help and her determination, and Geirmund broached the wooing a second time to Olaf, and now won the day easily. After that Geirmund and Thurid were betrothed, and the wedding was to be held at the end of the winter at Hrut. The wedding feast was a very crowded one, for the new hall was finished. Ulf Uggason was of the bidden guests, and he had made a poem on Olaf Hoskaldsson, and of the legends that were painted round the hall, and he gave it forth at the feast. This poem is called the House Song, and is well made. Olaf rewarded him well for the poem. Olaf gave great gifts to all the chief men who came. Olaf was considered to have gained in renown by this feast. Chapter XXX, about Geirmund and Thurid, A.D. 978. Geirmund and Thurid did not get on very well together, and little love was lost between them on either side. When Geirmund had stayed with Olaf 3 winters, he wished to go away, and gave out that Thurid and his daughter Groa should remain behind. This little maid was by then a year old, and Geirmund would not leave behind any money for them. This the mother and daughter liked very ill, and told Olaf so. Olaf said, "What is the matter now, Thorgerd? Is the Eastman now not so bounteous as he was that autumn when he asked for the alliance?" They could get Olaf to do nothing, for he was an easy-going man, and said the girl should remain until she wished to go, or knew how in some way to shift for herself. At parting, Olaf gave Geirmund the merchant ship all fitted out. Geirmund thanked him well therefor, and said it was a noble gift. Then he got on board his ship, and sailed out of the Salmon river, mouth by a northeast breeze, which dropped as they came out to the islands. He now lies by Ox, Isle half a month without a fair wind rising for a start. At that time Olaf had to leave home to look after his foreshore drifts. Then Thurid, his daughter, called to his house, carles, and bade them come with her. She had the maid Groa with her, and they were a party of 10 together. She lets run out into the water a ferry boat that belonged to Olaf, and Thurid bade them sail and row along Vamfirth, and when they came out to the islands she bade them put out the boat that was in the ferry. Thurid got into the boat with 2 men, and bade the others take care of the ship she left behind until she returned. She took the little maid in her arms, and bade the men row across the current until they should reach the ship of Geirmund. She took a gimlet out of the boat's locker, and gave it to one of her companions, and bade him go to the boat belonging to the merchant ship, and bore a hole in it so as to disable it, if they needed it in a hurry. Then she had herself put ashore with the little maid still in her arms. This was at the hour of sunrise. She went across the gangway into the ship, where all men were asleep. She went to the hammock where Geirmund slept. His sword footbitter hung on a peg-pole. Thurid now sets the little maid in the hammock, and snatched off footbitter, and took it with her. Then she left the ship, and rejoined her companions. Now the little maid began to cry, and with that Geirmund woke up and recognized the child, and thought he knew who must be at the bottom of this. He springs up wanting to seize his sword, and misses it, as was to be expected, and then went to the gunwale, and saw that they were rowing away from the ship. Geirmund called to his men, and bade them leap into the boat and row after them. They did so, but when they got a little way they found how the blue sea poured into them, so they went back to the ship. Then Geirmund called Thurid, and bade her come back, and give him his sword footbitter, and take your little maid, and with her as much money as you like. Thurid answered, Would you rather than not have the sword back? Geirmund answered, I would give a great deal of money before I should care to let my sword go. Thurid answered, Then you shall never have it again, for you have in many ways behaved cowardly towards me, and here we shall part for good. Then Geirmund said, Little luck will you get with the sword. Thurid said she would take the risk of that. Then I lay there on this spell, said Geirmund, that this sword shall do to death the man in your family in whom will be the greatest loss, and who will least deserve it. After that Thurid went home to Hrut. Olaf had then come home, and showed his displeasure at her deed, yet all was quiet. Thurid gave Bolli, her cousin, the sword footbitter, for she loved him in no way less than her brothers. Bolli bore that sword for a long time after. After this Geirmund got a favourable wind, and sailed out to sea, and came to Norway in the autumn. They sailed one night on to some hidden rocks before stayed, and then Geirmund and all his crew perished. And that is the end of all there is to tell about Geirmund. Chapter Roman 31. Thurid's second marriage, A.D. 982. Olaf Hoskaldsson now stayed at home in much honor, as has been told before. There was a man named Gudmund, who was the son of Salround, and lived at Asbjorness north in Willowdale. He wooed Thurid, and got her and a great deal of wealth with her. Thurid was a wise woman, high-tempered and most stirring. Their sons were called Hall and Bardi and Stein and Steingrim. Gudrun and Olaf were their daughters. Thorbjorg, Olaf's daughter, was of women the most beautiful and stout of build. She was called Thorbjorg the Stout, and was married west in Waterfirth to Asgeir, the son of Not. He was a noble man. Their son was Jartan, father of Thorvald, the father of Thord, the father of Snorri, the father of Thorvald, from whom is sprung the Waterfirth race. Afterwards Vermund, the son of Thorgrim, had Thorbjorg for wife. Their daughter was Thorfina, whom Thorstein Kugassin had for wife. Bergthora, Olaf's daughter, was married west in Deepfirth to Thorhall the priest. Their son was Jartan, father of Smith Sturla, the foster son of Thord Gilson. Olaf Peacock had many costly cattle. He had one very good ox named Harry. It was dapple, grey of coat, and bigger than any other of his cattle. It had 4 horns, 2 great and fair ones. The third stood straight up, and a fourth stood out of its forehead, stretching down below its eyes. It was with this that he opened the ice in winter to get water. He scraped snow away to get at pasture like a horse. One very hard winter he went from Herdholt into the Broadfirth dales to a place that is now called Harristed. There he roamed through the winter with 16 other cattle, and got grazing for them all. In the spring he returned to the home pastures, to the place now called Hari's lair in Hrut land. When Hari was 18 winters old, his ice breaking horn fell off, and that same autumn Olaf had him killed. The next night Olaf dreamed that a woman came to him, and she was great and wrathful to look at. She spoke and said, "Are you asleep?" He said he was awake. The woman said, "You are asleep, though it comes to the same thing as if you were awake. You have had my son slain, and let him come to my hand in a shapeless plight, and for this deed you shall see your son blood-stained all over through my doing, and him I shall choose thereto, whom I know you would like to lose least of all." After that she disappeared, and Olaf woke up and still thought he saw the features of the woman. Olaf took the dream very much to heart, and told it to his friends, but no one could read it to his liking. He thought those spoke best about this matter who said that what had appeared to him was only a dream or fancy. Chapter Roman 32. Of Osvif Helgason. Osvif was the name of a man. He was the son of Helgi, who was the son of Otter, the son of Bjorn the Eastman, who was the son of Ketil Flatnose, the son of Bjorn Buna. The mother of Osvif was named Nidbjerg. Her mother was Cadlin, the daughter of Ganging, Hrolf, the son of Ox Thorir, who was a most renowned hersier, warlord east in Wick. Why he was so called was that he owned 3 islands with 80 oxen on each. He gave one island and its oxen to Hakon the king, and his gift was much talked about. Osvif was a great sage. He lived at Lager in Sailingsdale. The homestead of Lager stands on the northern side of Sailingsdale river, over against Tongue. The name of his wife was Thordis, daughter of Jodolf the Low. Osbak was the name of one of their sons. Another was named Helgi, and a third Vandrad, and a fourth Torad, and a fifth Thorolf. They were all doughty men for fighting. Gudrun was the name of their daughter. She was the goodliest of women who grew up in Iceland, both as to looks and wits. Gudrun was such a woman of state that at that time whatever other women wore in the way of finery of dress was looked upon as children's gewgaws beside hers. She was the most cunning and the fairest spoken of all women, and an open-handed woman withal. There was a woman living with Osvif who was named Thorhalla, and was called the Chatterer. She was some sort of relation to Osvif. She had 2 sons, one named Odd and the other Stein. They were muscular men, and in a great measure the hardest toilers for Osvif's household. They were talkative like their mother, but ill liked by people, yet were upheld greatly by the sons of Osvif. At Tongue there lived a man named Thorarin, son of Thorir Sailing the Voluptuous. He was a well-off yeoman, a big man and strong. He had very good land, but less of livestock. Osvif wished to buy some of his land from him, for he had lack of land, but a multitude of livestock. So this then came about that Osvif bought of the land of Thorarin all the tract from Gnupaskerd along both sides of the valley to Stackgill, and very good and fattening land it was. He had on it an out, dairy. Osvif had at all times a great many servants, and his way of living was most noble. West in Soaby is a place called Hall. There lived 3 kinsmen. In law Thorkel the Whelp and Nut, who were brothers. They were very well born men, and their brother in law, who shared their household with them, who was named Thord. He was, after his mother, called Ingun's son. The father of Thord was Glum Jerison. Thord was a handsome and valiant man, well knit, and a great man of lawsuits. Thord had for wife the sister of Thorkel and Nut, who was called Odd, neither a goodly nor a buxom woman. Thord loved her little, as he had chiefly married her for her money, for there a great wealth was stored together, and the household flourished from the time that Thord came to have hand in it with them.